Hey friends, and welcome to Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. I am your host, Diane Lozo, also known as Lucy Smiles. I have my trusty angel here today because we are having a special guest in the living room on location. I want to welcome into the living room, Karen McGregor. Thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you, Diane. I'm so excited to be here with you today in Mazatlan.
It's amazing.
It is.
And so before we get started, we have quite a story of how we met. But before we get started, Karen McGregor is a motivational speaker and trainer, and she focuses on supporting impact entrepreneurs on how to deliver and create powerful messages so they can actually impact the world through their gift. And today, I'm really excited to talk about what that looked like for you and how you got started from that. We are here live in Mazatlan, Mexico, and I know that I had seen a year before I moved to Mexico that you were in Mexico. And so I say that as we start because I realize the power of influence, and we don't realize the nuggets of influence that come into our lives. My life is how it showed up, that we don't realize that what we focus on can create such a magnificent change in our life. And so, Karen, welcome to the show. It's so beautiful to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really passionate about everything that you have shared about, how our stories really inspire others to be who they want to be and to be guided in that process.
Yeah. So you so generously gifted me your third book before we started the podcast. So you're an author as well. Yes. You're an author, a speaker, a trainer. And so I would love to get started by going back to how did you create this brand that you've had and I know a lot of women in Vancouver and the world who I've personally spoken to that have actually directly worked with you. So can you tell us, what was the influence for you and how did you decide this is what I want to do to support other people, other entrepreneurs?
Well, I used to be a teacher back in the day in my 20s, and I really believe that we all have essential archetypes. I've never written about it, but it's something that I can see in myself, and as I get older, I can see that the teacher archetype has always been with me. And even when I just came out of a 3-year sabbatical. So when I took that sabbatical, I thought, maybe I'm not in the teacher archetype anymore. What do I want to create for myself? And although I had, many different ideas, I still came back to, I am a teacher who wants to and needs to help people spread messages. Wow. It always comes back to that. It may have different variations and look, a little bit different, but it always comes back to that. And so here I am after the 3-year sabbatical doing something very similar to what I was doing before. Only now I appreciate stories so much more. I think it's been partly living in Mexico and seeing the connection of people. The culture is much more family oriented, and so we tell stories. That's how we connect with each other. Yeah. And so that piece has been really precious to me, to step into learning more about how different cultures and how different people connect through story.
Wow. So can you share then from where you were before the 3-year sabbatical? And then I absolutely want to talk about the importance and sometimes just the significance of taking some time off. This is a conversation that I had even just yesterday, talking about the pause and how important it is. And so it's ironic. And we are going to talk about serendipity. There's so much to catch up within this next hour. So before this significant pause that you had, you were doing speaking on stage, large groups, large workshops and events. Yeah. Obviously, you were doing some, one-to-one and group coaching. So what is it you're doing now, and how did that shift for you? Like, what is it that you're offering now?
Well, definitely before, it was about helping people to create a talk that would work for them, that would give them the opportunity to create the impact that they wanted. And also the offer part of it was important too, because so many of us as entrepreneurs, we want to create impact, but the offer is so scary, and it's got multiple emotions, our trapped emotions and our mindset around money and offers. And so that piece became more pronounced just in the last little while, because when I came out of my sabbatical and, really focused on the stories and whatnot, I had some former clients who came back to me, and it was so obvious that they had done the work, but they hadn't done the mental and emotional work necessary to really create their own reality. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I'm very much a process person, and I love to teach people the steps.
Yes.
But I thought, oh my gosh, this is so evident that this piece is missing.
It's a gap there.
It's a gap.
Right.
Yeah. And so now I'm also passionate to support people, not only in the process of the story and the offer, but also, oh my gosh, what does it take to step out of my own way and create my reality?
Right.
Yeah.
And is that when you're talking about how you're supporting them with your mentorship? Or I love the word guide, because I think, there's gurus and, out there that we may look at, as they're on a pedestal and they've already done it. And I think a lot of times that we feel that disconnect. But one of the things that I've known from the work that you've done in the past and the people that I've talked to that have worked with you is that relatability. Feeling like you're almost, I share with you about how I had a podcast doula, but almost that doula that's like holding your hand along the way to, number one, not make you feel alone, and also just to feel that you're able to relate to that. And one of the things I've noticed too, being in this, the spiritual space or the, whatever you want to call it, is that there is unfortunately a disconnect between people wanting to change the world at a really high level and not believing that they should be getting compensated at a really high level. And that disconnect is a disservice to the world. So
Absolutely.
Is that something that, because as I'm hearing you talk, you're allowing that opportunity for them to fill that gap so they can actually shine at a level that's going to change more people that are needing to hear what they have to offer through your offering guidance, right?
Absolutely. And I think that so often we either get caught up with, okay, these are the things that I need to do in my business in order to reach where I'm going, without the consideration of, where am I possibility wise in my mind? What am I creating? And whatever it is that you are creating as possibility needs to match your daily things that you do think.
Yeah.
What are you being?
Yeah.
And so that alignment, we don't actually look at that very often as people.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, as an entrepreneur, if you want to create impact, what is your mind doing? And not just, oh, here's my to-do list today, let me get to it. Because there's always a limit to that. There's always a cap, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, why can't I get beyond that? And then we start going back to, the basics of aligning the to do and the to be and the mindset.
I was just going to say that it's like you could have the to-do list, you could have the goals, you could have, that's amazing. I have goals. I have milestones that I'm looking to achieve, for my own, what is important to me, like, saving the dogs and working in that realm. I know what my vision is. One of the things that I noticed for myself was, am I connected to the person that is doing those things in the future? How can I embody who that person is, even though that reality is not the current reality, so that you're actually calling it in, because it's like, that's who she is, not what she's trying to do in the future. And I feel like it's almost like the secret weapon is be who you want to be, that's doing those things that you want to be doing, whether it's 5 years from now, 5 months from now. And I noticed for myself too, that you start to feel the sense of serendipity that happens, or alignment with your soul, when you act as if, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I think I always remember being on stage and people would never, well, it's not true. It's not that they would never remember what I taught them. Of course they did. But it's not what mattered to them 5-10 years later.
Right.
It was that I was able to see through to who they really were.
Yeah.
And bring that out versus the mask and the fears and the uncertainties and the beliefs that, get in the way. But if we can get back to who are we really, that's so powerful as a trainer to be able to just sink into that with people. And you feel each other's hearts. And I think that's why people come back to me and say, I'll never forget, you were the first person who saw who I really was.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's so powerful.
And it's interesting as you're talking about that, because I think in this world, I mean, you and I met in 2008. We have to share that story in a minute.
We do.
It's kind of crazy.
It's a crazy story.
It's pretty nuts. And then now we're here. It almost makes me want to cry. Because we've been like simultaneously living, but like, hi.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love what you said when you have the feedback from your clients that say, that you really saw them. So in a world where we can witness that so many people, we're almost like not sure who, like to be ourselves because we see what's out there. It's like, well, if we're like that, then I'll be successful. But then that's not you. Your success is going to be driven at a higher level when you are the you that's meant to be impacting the world. I learned something. I was just on a business trip last weekend with this amazing mentor out of Europe. And he had said, it was so interesting because even after 2 decades of always being curious to do more, to be more, he had said something. He said, why would you try to be something you're not? They're going to figure it out anyway. And then you're not hanging around with the people that are your people because you're not being the you that is attracting the people that you want to be with.
Love that.
And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Even though it sounds so like, well, of course, but it's not of course, because how many of us are walking around imposter syndrome, but it's not imposter syndrome. It's like imposter to our own soul. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't need to be liked by everyone. If they don't like me or if they don't want to be around me for the person that I am, then I'm blocking out the space for those that are meant to be working with me because of who I am and what I have to offer. And it is a fine line because we live in a world of competition. Whether we like it or not, it's like a daily practice to say, like, how can I be my best self? So when you shared about with your clients saying that you were seeing them, what a beautiful permission for them to realize that it's their soul that's meant to shine, not pretending who their soul could be to shine. It's very beautiful. So I have a question for you around your clients, because I know you've worked with so many beautiful souls. Now, is it mostly women? You work mostly with women, or is it?
I would say about 20% men, 80% women.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So what did you find, or what have you found was like a theme in the barriers that people have that you were finding like, okay, this is like a theme that I'm noticing that's stopping them from getting to the next level? And how are you able to work with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that more of that has come out in the last few years when I took my sabbatical, because I myself had a lot of difficulty. When you get to a certain level of your business or when a lot of people know who you are, I think that it creates a solid ego identity. And so when I stopped everything and I moved to Mexico and I just said, okay, I'm going to just do nothing. It was so hard because my identity of Karen McGregor, who she is, what she's done, all of that, it was there, and it was knocking at my door like a tyrant. And it was saying, surely you must do something now. I mean, well, it's been 6 months, it's been 12 months, it's been 18 months. Hello, let's get going. And it was that process of hearing the ego, because Diane, I always thought that I loved myself, that I had enormous and I did have confidence, but that I loved who I was. And I didn't understand people who would say, well, you just have to love yourself or self-love. I didn't understand it at all until I realized that that ego that was yelling at me about my identity was actually the voice of like, it was proof that I didn't have self-love.
Wow.
Because I had to be something. I had to do something. I had to become another great identity in order to be okay with myself. So I realized the whole thing I had created was, there was no self-love in it.
Wow.
It was all there, and it was wonderful, and I gave back to people and all of that, but it had nothing to do with self-love. So my journey really started to unravel the moment that I moved to Mexico and realized that, wow, this voice, this tyrant is there because it wants me to get busy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my greatest lesson that I think I now can share with other people, is that we think that building an identity, you know, and all the success and the money and the fame or whatever it is that people enjoy when they first receive it.
Yeah.
None of that has to do with, you know, like truly loving ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful, that lesson.
And the permission to say, because that's a hard one.
It's hard.
It's like, oh, I could love myself without that definition of, right? And I have to tell you, it's the you're not, I mean, we have to get to the story of how we met, because you're not going to believe that the podcast episode that literally came out today is called Love Yourself More.
Wow.
And it's with my mentor from my business, Mitch Newman. I shared that with you because, like, you need to meet him. I mean, you guys are, and literally, like, what's airing today, and I'm hearing you say that. And as you're sharing your story of coming to Mexico, I have the same story and you had mentioned before we started recording that you remembered, like, my writing, that I stopped writing and then I started writing again. And in that, I would beat myself up. And I came to Mexico and I just needed to be. And so 2 years ago, I came to Mexico and I just, you know, I had built my wellness business for 9 years. I still love it. I'm still a support system for it. But when I came to Mexico, I just needed to ride my bike, get my vegetables, walk the dogs, just be. And I remember saying to myself, if someone asks me, like, what do I do? I'm like, oh, I don't even what do I do? Who am I? And then I would start saying, oh my God, you need to be writing. And all of it was exactly. So it's so interesting. So as you're sharing, you're healing you're allowing me to heal, to say everything is on purpose. And as I hear the work that you're now doing after your 3-year sabbatical, we need to have those pauses and those sabbaticals, whatever you want to call it, to prepare ourselves to be in the next phase of our lives of contribution.
Yes.
And literally yesterday, another girlfriend of mine, it was the same thing. She had lost both of her parents, and she had said, you know, I needed to take a couple of years off. And she created an environment for herself financially, because she said, I'm never going to retire from being in mission work. But she goes, I know that something is coming and I need to take some time just to be in being and having a pause. I'm like, wow, the permission to pause. Can you imagine? But imagine if you didn't share that story, that I was like, oh my gosh. So that was okay that I went through that. And then I think about her yesterday. And that is why these, you know, sharing our stories with others there's a piece of their story that gets ignited. And that is how we heal the world, you know?
Yes.
And so thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. And then knowing the work that I get to witness you doing moving forward will be so powerful, because you gave yourself that permission to recalibrate your energy, to see what you needed to see without being so busy.
Totally. And I think one of the things about all of us is that we have different sides to us. And what I noticed was, I loved that side that could create the trainings, the courses, that could deliver, you know, clearly, powerfully. But I didn't love the side of me that was the more feminine flow, be it in the moment. And when I say I mean the ego, right?
Yeah.
The ego doesn't like that so much.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed, which is beautiful over the last few months, is I'm very aware that I have different parts to me. I am in my masculine and my feminine at different times. I am a creator, and I'm also very good at, just sitting around the kitchen table and, journaling or cooking, baking. I love baking. And I noticed that my ego wants to only like certain parts of me. But now that I'm very aware of that, I just think, wow, there's so many beautiful things that come out of enjoying being each of those types or roles or whatever we want to call it. But accepting and enjoying each part of us is, I think, it is my current journey in self-love, because there's just so much more joy to be had when we can enjoy all of those aspects of ourselves.
And it's interesting, as you were sharing about like self-discovery, it's so important for us as we're here, because really that's what it's all about, is learning those things. And as we're, the ego is talking and we're like, well, we should be doing, it's interesting because if you really just slow down a little bit, your body tells you what you need. Like your body will tell you like, wow, great job in the masculine creating. And how about a break? The beach is calling you, or the forest is calling you, or your hiking boots are calling you, or like sitting and doing nothing and not even reading, because sometimes we're like, okay, now that we've done, now that I've done something, now I'll just go read a book. How about don't even read the book?
Love that. I love that.
Yeah, because I've done it like a couple of nights ago. I'm like, oh, I haven't been reading, so maybe I'll take a break and just read. I'm like, I don't even want to read. And I'm like, well, you haven't read a book in a couple of weeks. I'm like, it's interesting because even the relaxing parts are the ego trying to make you do the relaxation.
Oh, it's so tricky. The ego is so tricky. Very, very tricky. Yes.
So it's amazing. Yeah. And so I want to share our story of how we met. So
absolutely.
It's so interesting. You're going to love this one. So back in, because I think it's amazing when you follow the lines of energy that you don't even realize. So Karen and I met in 2008. I went to a meditation. It was like this meditation, and I was the first one, and there was another woman there, and we were meditating in a circle. It was right before I think the documentary I went to see was the 10 questions for Buddha, or was it Dalai Lama, the 10 questions to ask were asked to Dalai Lama. I'm like, I went by myself in Vancouver and I met this woman, and we're sitting in this dark room with a circle, and it was only her and I waiting for the rest of the people to show up. And she asked me about me, and I said, oh, my name is Diane, but I write under the name Lucy Smiles. And this was like 1 year into me writing. So it's interesting too, because as I remember saying it, I felt like that was just who I always was. It was like only 1 year in. And she said, oh my gosh, you would love my friend Karen McGregor. And I'm like, oh, sounds like I would, And I said, well, introduce me to her, but I'm heading out to Vegas because I'm going to the Louise Hay I Can Do It convention, but I'd love to come and meet back with her in Vancouver after I get back. And she said, Karen's going to the I Can Do It conference. I'm like, so then I remember saying to her, send me her number and I will see. And I remember saying, I'll see if we can meet for tea. And so I had every intention. So the intention was there that we were going to meet. And so this conference at the Sands Hotel, June 2008, went by myself, and there's probably 3,000 people there maybe.
Oh, yes.
And this was back in the day when they actually had breakout rooms, like you choose what course you wanted. I remember I went to see Dr. Doris Cohen for past life regression. And I did like all these met Greg Braden. That's how I got introduced to heart math. And we talked about Greg. And the last bathroom break of the event, there was like two big restrooms, like ladies' rooms on each side of the Sands Hotel in the conference center. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it's quite a while ago, but my name was Diane. And I think I had said something to someone in the ladies' room. It was packed in the ladies' room.
Packed.
Like
I remember.
Literally like almost elbow to elbow.
Yeah.
All the ladies had to tinkle. And I think I was saying something to someone, or you were saying BC, Vancouver, actually, or I said it. And then you said, oh my God, Lucy Smiles. And I looked at my badge. I'm like, why would you call me Lucy Smiles if my badge says Diane? And that's how we met in the ladies' room. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I said, Karen McGregor. And so we ended up meeting, not for tea, And that's how we met. Literally, like and I always think about life as like an aerial view. It's like, here I was, and I met Raywin, and we were here, and then all of a sudden we're in Vegas, and then we were meant to meet, and then we met. It's amazing. It's such an amazing, yeah. And then I followed you ever since. And I did go to, I can't remember the name of the women's event. It was at the Pan Pacific, I think, and you were speaking on stage.
Yes.
Because I was like, I need to go and see this woman in action. And I was just like blown away by the work that you did.
Oh,
and since then, because it's been however many years, I'm not the best at math, but since 2008, I have met so many women that know you, that have worked with you. Right. So I went back to Vancouver in October, and I had lunch with one of them. And then there's another woman here. We're actually doing a sound healing in my backyard tonight. She's like, oh my God, Karen McGregor, of course. So it's amazing, all from just serendipity. I think it's just beautiful.
Well, and I have to say, what struck me most about you was that you follow your guidance. And, throughout the years, for me, being very busy doing, it was just like to hear you talk about your journey and how you truly trusted that guidance and be in flow with that, and just take the first step.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the first step.
Yeah.
And that has always stuck with me all these years that I've, been connected to you, because I think it's so underestimated until you hit a time where there's supreme chaos, difficulty in life, don't know where you're going to go, what direction should I head in? Maybe it's a relationship. What do I do there?
Yeah.
But I feel that your message, to me anyway, was don't forget. Ask your guidance, follow your guidance, listen to your guidance. Mm-hmm. And that has really served me well. So you influenced me as well.
That's so nice.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. And I remember now too, the influence about women supporting women. And again, it's men and women all day long. So but I do want to share this, because whenever I did chat with you, like we've only met in person 3 times, I think.
Yeah.
1, 2.
Yeah.
This could be the 3rd. Or 4th officially. And so I remember also chatting with you, and you had said to me, you're in Vancouver. I moved to Toronto. And you said to me, if you wanted to get a group of your women together, I'm more than happy to come and fly to Toronto, and I'll do an event for you. I'm like, well, I have to round up some women. But I want to share this because I think this is really important. That I didn't do it for any other reason than I loved who you were. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what a gift to give these women in my life, to show this woman that I met that I love the work that you're doing based on who you are. And so people don't buy your business. They don't buy your product. They don't buy your service. They buy who you are. Yes. And so I remember, saying yes to that. I didn't know what was going to happen. And you didn't say, if 20 women show up, then I will come. Yeah. Because I said to you, like, okay, well, like, how many do I need to have? And you're like, no, create something and I will fly to Toronto. And I remember the beautiful place that I rented out. I wish I could remember the name. It was on Spadina and whatever street that was anyway. And I remember having a handful of women come, and I still see them like your things on social media. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was amazing because you were just so gracious about it. And it really was life-changing for those women who were able to sit in that beautiful event with you. And so I want to say thank you for that. That was in 2012. So it was like 4 years after we met. We hadn't seen each other since, but stayed connected. And I really believe that if we can share the light of other people, we don't know how that's going to impact. And I think it's really important that we can say, this person has done something to help me shift and help me bring my light to the forefront. This could be something for you. And the more we can do that, I think about the ripple effect and being more of like a spider web, right? And a spider web of how can we share others with others? And that's, the premise of my podcast is I had you on, like, whenever I decided, I want to share these conversations, you were literally, it was like Karen McGregor, and it's just knowing that your light is something that can help other people. Mm-hmm. And whatever nugget, it could be different for everybody, but something that you share today around your genuine self and your story, that could impact someone, that could change the trajectory, not only of that person, but the work that they're going to now offer the world. And imagine 10 of those people, impacting 10 people times. I mean, it's amazing. And that's how we shift the world.
Yes.
And I think it's really important because I think sometimes we have this sense of being defeated. Like there's nothing that I can do. What am I going to do to change all of that that's going on? And like, no, you're going to do the one thing that you are meant to do and let it go. Because you don't get to see the ripple effect of what that one step is. So, I just want to say thank you for that. It's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're welcome. Well, I truly feel like we are going into an age where community and collaboration is really what is going to impact people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Because with the 3 years or whatever, however many months and years that COVID existed, I think that a lot of us lost a sense of connection and community. And so now, whatever it is, 3-4 years later, you can see that it's become really important, and that people are starting to wake up. Oh boy, I need to be in connection with people here.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can do that, and also what I realized in my sabbatical was, a lot of this is childhood trauma too. Like my parents, they grew up in Germany, and wartime Germany, and they didn't have a sense of community because their community they were told they were wrong and bad and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And as children, you take on your nation's identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I was growing up, my mom and dad fought, and there was really a lot of separation, a lot of being alone. And so I always thought, well, that was natural, that I wanted to be alone.
Wow.
That I wanted to just sort of retreat, that it was my personality.
Right.
But what I realized in my sabbatical, when I really took a deeper look at it, was no, that was actually conditioned, that was inherited, that was, and it's deep, it runs really deep, that we have resistance to community, to collaboration, to friendship. But it is vital if you're going to create what you want in your life.
Yeah.
Whether it's a business or a new relationship, or, connecting with dear friends like yourself. And transactional relationships are done for me.
Oh,
like
my goodness.
I cannot, I smell it a mile away.
Yeah.
And if I see that somebody wants something from me, I want to know that they care first, always first. And then maybe we can talk about whatever it is.
Working together.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If
there's an alignment there.
Yeah.
It can't be transactional.
That's right. It can't be transactional. So I again, I look back at my life, and especially being married, I realized, wow, that marriage, although we loved each other in the beginning, it became so transactional. And when you do that, you take the love out of the relationship. I don't care who it is, your friend, your family, your colleagues, you are stripping the love from that relationship the moment that you think, what can I get from this person? And so again, I think the sabbatical was really a healing time for me to see how our family of origin sometimes, the dynamics of that can create this sense of isolation or separation.
It's amazing too. I met your friend, going back to just events, it's the serendipity, but I was in Kelowna at the Dr. Zach Bush event called The New Human. And it was so eye-opening because they had a couple that were on stage talking about sacred relationship. And sacred relationship with spouse, children, friendships, business partners. And one of the things that I learned, I'm like, oh my God, again, how did I not know this for 20 years? It's like, it's exciting whenever you can be curious and say, oh, new information of me to learn more about me, and be like, oh my gosh. And they talked about imprints. And so they talked about how was powerful for me. So they talked about say our own imprint. So like you had said, like the narrative of the, what you had learned, your learned behaviors through your family dynamic, your family systems, and then what that imprint is. And now in that imprint, what happens is we want to go make sure that we create the story to validate our imprint. Exactly. Which is toxic, but we don't even realize it. And so I started to learn about my imprints, and then I would start to learn about other people's imprints. So then you can come from a place of compassion, because no one wants to like have their imprint. No one's excited to create chaos in the relationships to validate their imprint, to make sure that they validate that they're not worthy, or they validate that their voice is not being heard, or like for me, the same thing, like whatever my imprint is. And so whenever I was able to be more curious about my own self-discovery, you can create better relationships with other people. Mm-hmm. And you can create a better relationship with yourself, so that you can you're allowed to have parameters and boundaries, but knowing why you have them and how it is meant for you to be your best. So it's not like I have a boundary, but knowing like, how do I want to show up in relationships? How do I want to make sure that I allow others to be showing up in my environment so that I can be in a healthy relationship? And, you and I both talked as well too, is that sometimes relationships change. Yes. And we shift. And imagine if we can all give ourselves permission to evolve for our own sake and for the sake of being our best selves, and allowing those relationships to flow in and out of our life, however they're meant to be. Yeah. Right? Because we have the narrative of, well, that didn't work out, or, you quit on that, or what a failure. It's like, no, everything is all on purpose, but we just have to change. I'd say we would be better off if we could change the perspective of what that looks like.
Absolutely.
Right? And even if you think about even with you, with your branding and with Karen McGregor on stage and doing the work that you did and still doing, but like being a speaker and a trainer to help with people to create powerful messages, you gave yourself permission to have the sabbatical, to recalibrate and reframe so that you can have a different relationship with your delivery. Still a teacher, but that is such a great evolution to reach the people that you're meant to reach. But imagine if you said, no, I have to stay that person in that relationship with self. You're not doing yourself or anybody else any favors. And now you're not coming from a space of authenticity of who you actually are. So I would love to see an opportunity for us to do that in relationship to other people as well.
And I believe that the healing, that I went through, mm-hmm. and that I'm sure many of you out there are mm-hmm. going through right now, that needs to come into our purpose. So whatever our purpose is, or even just if we could just talk about career, I realized that, I don't have to call myself a healer, but I know that we each have a healer that supports our clients and mm-hmm. supports whoever we are around. Mm-hmm. And so that has just come about the last few months, just recognizing that, yes, I do have that left brain that's very good at being able to help people, mm-hmm. In wherever they want to go. But it's the healer part of me that I think is so important to help people to see, where am I right now in my journey of, personal growth and transformation and healing? And what does that look like if I let go of something? Because so many of us, we just, it's so hard to let go of the old ways of being, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's familiar.
It's familiar.
Even though it could really suck.
Oh, and I
Stay
still
with me anyway,
sometimes, you find yourself saying something. I find myself, oh my gosh, where did that came from? Yeah. That was 10 years ago. Stop that.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the healing aspect of being a trainer is vital. Mm-hmm. Personally, mm-hmm. I feel like that is my underlying sort of emphasis. So the structure of what we do as a teacher or trainer is logical, right. But then underneath all of that is the healing, which is not logical or linear.
Right. You can't measure it.
You can't.
Yeah.
And so you do need to have both. We all need to have both.
Mm-hmm.
But in particular, when I'm helping people, I feel now that this underpinning is critical.
Wow.
Critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having said that, I wonder, and if you could share, do you have, as you're moving into this phase that's, shifting for you in your, and how you're going to be supporting,
Yeah.
do you ever have like a fear because it's the unknown? Like, have you felt that way? Because you're talking about being more healer and less logical, still using both. But I would love to know from you, do you have those moments where you're like fearful because it's new territory? And if so, how are you able to support yourself in that, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
And this is an ongoing thing for me because I was so confident for so long. And then I found myself over those 3 years during the sabbatical getting fearful. My gosh, what if this happens? What if I'm not seen a certain way or accepted a certain way? And all of those thoughts had to go through me. So for everybody listening to this, I want them to know it's not that you're not going to have those thoughts. It's that you allow them, you see them for what they are, and you allow them to just move through you.
Wow.
I'm doing a lot of work right now with a book called The Emotion Code.
Okay.
And it's an old book, but
Sounds
it's
familiar, but
oh my gosh, Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I've heard that from a while ago. I've never read it.
And he talks about how our emotions get trapped inside of us. And so a lot of times when I feel fear, I know now that it's old emotions that are sitting there from a long time ago. Could be little Karen from the age of 6 even. Yeah. Or when I was married, 15 years ago. Yeah. But it's really important to acknowledge that there's so much behind fear. It's not just what you're seeing and how you're perceiving it. It's the old beliefs, it's the old emotion. Wow. And if we can really acknowledge and work through it. So I recommend people buy that book.
I would love to.
It's really a simple process that allows you to start to detach and release those age-old and often inherited.
Yeah, not yours.
absorbed or inherited, emotions.
Yeah.
And you don't have to take a course to learn it.
Yeah.
It's all in the book, and it's just really a way for people to just acknowledge and love themselves and release what is no longer working for them.
And it's interesting that you said that you don't have to take a course. I think, as we both love personal development, we love learning, but I also do believe that there's such a value for what you said, because we do have everything inside of us. Yes. It's nice to upgrade. I like to up level my skill set.
Sure.
All intuitively, if something calls to me, like I want to look into that. I want to take a look at that. So I love learning, but not from a place of like, I'm broken and I need to be fixed, or I'm not good enough until I have that certification or that course, or I need to learn that to be able to be something. I think there's a huge difference. So because we do have the answers inside of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And being able to, I think, like you had said too, is to trust, to learn that relationship to ourselves where we could trust ourselves to make the right choices, that we don't need to look for the different influences to answer that for us. Because again, there's nothing wrong with asking for advice or like getting mentorship. But a lot of times as well, people will give you the advice based on where they're at.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like imagine, like I've moved a couple of different places, and people say, oh, don't do that. That won't work. Or like, are you crazy? Or what, like that, why would you do that? And it's like, well, I'm just going to do it and see if my soul made the right choice rather than not doing it because someone thought it could be a bad idea.
And I'm with you on that. I have moved to a place that it's a beautiful place in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I have a property, a gorgeous property. Mm-hmm. And I would often hear, the egos say, well, you shouldn't have bought that property. You see, you made a mistake. you should have done this instead, or moved to this city like Mazatlan, or whatever it is. But what I'm realizing after these 3 years of actually being in the home, and that everything that we do, it is not a mistake. Mm-hmm. It appears to be a mistake, but what it actually is I needed to go through that in order to learn what has made me stronger, and able to give back to other people. And so now I'm creating a brand called Home of Impact Entrepreneurs. And I often think to myself, it's interesting that I chose the word home, because now I see that home isn't the house that I bought.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's this sense of being who you really are, and embracing that, and also the community, Home of Impact Entrepreneurs. We are like a community. And so I had to go through all of that in order to recognize, what is home? What is really home?
I love that.
Yeah.
2 things I want to ask you. Well, I'm going to make a comment on the home, because you could have said, well, I bought a home in Mexico. I need to keep it, make it work. And I know that you are ready to release that, and that's something where you're like, that was such a perfect opportunity for you to do that. I'm sure this maybe potentially could, as part of your vision, like buying the home, having it, creating it, and then realizing it's not like you were selling your home in beautiful Ajijic, but also like now it's time to release that home and to create this home for impact entrepreneurs. And I think it's beautiful because it's you saying, yes, I could change the relationship of what that looks like, rather than, well, I had a home, I have to make it work, and I bought it. So it like, can you imagine? Because I totally get it.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting too. So it's amazing. And I would love to also take some time to talk about what this Home of Impact Entrepreneurs is. And I'll share with you, going back to the home owning. So when Anthony and I, my husband and I, decided to move to Mexico, well, I decided and told him, by the way, we're moving. And he was very happy with the decision. Yeah. But what happened was, before that, we went for a bike ride. I remember Canada Day 2021 or 2020, actually. It was like during COVID. We took a bike ride. And I said to him, the first step in our future is to sell the house. And he looked at me. I remember clearly. He's like, well, sell the house? I've always been a homeowner. And I said, well, get used to not being one. And I'm not saying I tell my husband what to do, but I literally said it. I said, well, what about not being identified as a homeowner? What about if we decided to sell it, change up a few things, and create an environment where we have the freedom to not be a homeowner for the moment? We could always buy a house and reevaluate it after. And because of us selling the home that we bought together, and it was only 2 years after we bought it, so we could have said, well, we just only bought it 2 years ago. What are we doing? Like, who are we? But we did. We sold the home very quickly, because I have the best real estate agent in Oakville if anyone wants to work with her. And I just called her. It was Canada Day. And I said, can you come to our backyard? We want to talk about selling the house. She's like, no problem. And I know how it was difficult for him, because he literally had owned, and he's older than I am. So like, he's always been a homeowner. Mm-hmm. But because we sold that home and we got rid of the identity of being a homeowner, our whole world has shifted.
Right.
And will we buy a house again? Of course, if that's what's meant to be. But it took us having, like, he was attached to it, but I get it. Yeah. But it was because he was able to say, like, why am I walking around like identifying myself? That could actually like hold me back from what could happen if I just release the house for the moment. And so I think that's really beautiful. So now I really, really get it. When we can just stop identifying ourselves or defining ourselves based on XYZ, our world can change. And it's about not caring what other people think, or not caring what our ego's trying to tell us how to think about ourselves, to be, to be worthy, if you will.
Yes.
So I'm excited to hear about this Home of Impact Entrepreneurs, because I want to be a part of it, obviously. So tell us about what that is all about.
Well, as I said, I really felt like a calling to bring impact entrepreneurs together, because, and here's the thing, over the last 3 years, there's been more and more people online that are saying, make your 8-figure income today in the next 3 hours. I'm going to show
Or
you.
less.
I'm going to show you. Yeah, usually it's less. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
And like I have a very healthy relationship to money,
Mhm.
but what I don't like is that now we have, as a society, we've bought into this idea that an entrepreneur only should care about one thing, and that's to make at least $1 million. And now it's, of course, more than that. It's 8 figures.
Yeah.
So my idea is that in the home of the impact entrepreneur is that we care about making money, but it's not the focus. The focus is, what is the impact we can create in the world? How can we make this world a better place before we leave this earth?
Wow.
Yeah. I have a couple of friends who, stage 4 cancer. I've had several young people die in my world.
Wow.
And it really has woke me up to the reality that, nobody talks about on your deathbed, wow, you made $5 million this past year. Whoa, that's just the greatest.
Yeah.
No, they're going to talk about how you impacted them
Mhm.
in their life.
Yeah.
How did you love them? How did you inspire them?
Yeah.
And sometimes money can definitely be an inspiration, but I just feel like Home of Impact Entrepreneurs is taking a stand and saying, there's too much of that.
Yeah.
Why don't we focus on what really matters here, people?
It's true, the contribution. Because contribution is currency, right?
Yes.
And collaboration is currency.
Yes.
And the fulfillment that comes from that is so much more rich than just having the money.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. Like I know that I could be more of who I am when I have more money, but more of who I am is the impact, and then the money shows up. So it really has to be like, what is the priority, and what does that priority look like?
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing.
Thank
so
you.
what would that entail for those that are, because I do have an audience of impact entrepreneurs. And so I would love to be able to give them a glimpse of what that looks like. And again, it will obviously have all of your information in the show notes in the description.
Yes.
But what is the vision for that? And what does that look like for people?
Well, it's in its infancy in terms of the community, right?
Yeah.
But I envision that the community, that there's a network. Perhaps it's on television. I don't know, Netflix, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I feel like the focus will be stories about impact entrepreneurs, our community doing good things. And then what I'd like to do is be able to have people who have a brilliant idea but need funding, as an example.
Yeah.
That there would be a show that, where they could go through and demonstrate what they're doing, but not like Dragon's Den, where you just, it's not like that. It's more of, we're taking these people and we're developing their skill sets along the way.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's a winner at the end that they get the funding or what have you. But the idea is that we take them through their story and develop that so that they can create more impact.
Wow.
So that's one part.
Yeah.
And then the more simple part is, I would personally be honored to train people in the different aspects of what it takes to create more impact. And for me, that's messaging. How do you message? How do you tell a story? How do you deliver your offer? Can be a free offer, can be a paid offer, can be a very high ticket offer. It doesn't matter. But the underpinnings of that, as we talked about before, are also belief and emotions. But then we've got the whole process.
Yeah. How
does the process work to be able to get there? So I feel like the one part, is great. It's happening now, and this part is, it's still it's in its infancy in terms of the vision. But I'm really excited that through the power of story, many people can see and get involved and support this impact entrepreneur in whatever way that might look like.
Yeah.
But if they're telling a powerful story,
and you're reaching the people that can support
you're
you.
reaching the people. Yeah.
One of the things that came to me as you're sharing that is when I witnessed my own journey, and when I felt like, whenever I felt like I was able to, I don't want to use the word achieve, but do more, or actually like impact more, was whenever I had kind of like someone who would be a guide. So as I'm hearing you say that you would be able to support people with the messaging, one of the things I think that stops people from growing or actually impacting is the fear of not having the confidence or even the posture.
Yes.
So that's a word that's been coming to me lately, is that when people have a posture, then they're able to like just have that more of that confidence, right? And so if you're able to say, I know your vision, I know how important that would be to get out into the world. And I know that you're stopping because there's that little gap again. We go back to the gap. So if you're able to offer that for people, then it's just another way to guide them to get to their highest self and then impact at the highest level. So that's amazing.
Yeah. And that's really, you nailed it on the head there. That's what I see for the television, the network, the Netflix.
Yeah.
I see that there would be the element of practical, this is what you need to learn.
Yeah.
But then there's the soft skills and the beliefs and the emotions. We need to be holistic in our approach, because impact requires us to be a whole person. And so we need help with the whole package, not just one part.
Because it's synergistic.
It is.
Because you could have, even if you have all of them in strong points, you have to put them all together as an ecosystem, just like our body.
Yes.
Right? The heart's great working, the brain's great working, but if they're not communicating, there's still a gap, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And I've always loved the work that you do, clearly. And I'm excited to hear more about that and be a part of it, whatever that looks like.
Thank you.
And I know you have 2 sons. You're a mom of 2 sons.
Yes.
And I want to ask you that too, is because I don't have any children, but I have, nephews and nieces. And I just think about how I want to be an influence for them. Right. And not by telling them what to do. Right. But also just by embodying an impactful, influential energy for them, so they could see what's possible in this world. And so for you, with your boys, like, what is one thing that you would like to share as I like to ask a question at the end, the one thing that you want them to know as they're moving on in their life, and also for millennials and those that are in the younger generation, because we're grew up in a very different generation. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Instagram. We barely had the internet. I sometimes wonder how I even landed jobs by just walking down the street with my paper and resume and making random phone calls. So I would love to ask you, as you're moving forward, is what are some, tools or some messages that can help them to create powerful impact for those that may be watching or that they have children that are wondering, because I know that there's a different struggle and challenge happening within the 20-year-olds and even the 30-year-olds, or those even in their teens.
Yes.
So is there anything that you can share that can help to maybe bring some light for them?
Well, my kids are 23 and 26.
So
that's
Anthony's son
right
is 25,
in that. Yes. And yes, it's true that they are, their whole world, their whole interaction is through social media and texting and being online. And so because of that, they see more than we do in terms of influences and what they should be and what they should do.
Yeah.
And so I've taken an opposite approach to sort of balance that out and just say, is what is it right now in your heart? If you could just put the whole world away for a minute, what is it that you really want? And sometimes that can take different forms. So that's where I help them too, is sometimes, they say, well, this is the way that I see that I could fulfill my heart, my heart's calling. But there might be 2 or 3 other ways that I could open their eyes to.
Wow.
And so rather than, I've never told my kids, not even homework, I've never told them to do it. I just leave it, because that is a life lesson for them, you know?
And for you.
And for me, that's right.
As
and
a parent,
for me,
you know, not being a helicopter parent.
no,
There's
that's
a
right. No, and
Wow.
I've always been just in the background, seeing what's happening. Now, with my younger son, I did recently, what I feel is I stepped in to support and help him. But usually, unless they're in real trouble, I don't.
Yeah, you allow them to
Yes.
grow. Really.
Yeah, and I give them options and they ask me for my advice, and I always give them different options and never what to do. You know, you have to do this. But sometimes they do, like just the last few months, I'm proud of myself that I did see what was happening for my younger one, and sort of support him to come out of everything that he was going through, which is private. So I won't talk about it, but yeah, sometimes we do need to just come in there and show them, hey, I'm here for you. It's just like a good friend or anybody really that you care about,
and that you see them, that
you
alone.
see there's something going on there and it's not good, and just, you know, really to support them. So I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is, I've always said to my kids, it's okay to be different. You know, you don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. And that was really important for my older son, because he is different, and he thinks differently, and he behaves much differently than other people do. And he grew up with me having that message. It's okay to be different. And he now is very comfortable in himself at the age of 26. And I think that was critical, that message came from me.
Right.
And also, you know, and it's similar to you. I mean, we don't follow just for the sake of following. Look into it more. What is really behind that choice that many people are making?
And being able to say, is that the choice for me, or is it not?
Exactly. Yeah. So
and
I would say,
it takes bravery and it takes courage. So that's why I love that you say that as being a mom, because you were not saying, you know, be more like your brother, or why are you acting like, almost like that's not normal for you to behave that way if it's different, but being able to say it is like whoever you are is who you're meant to be, and keep going with that. If we could only be given permission to be authentic and unique, then we wouldn't have it would be a lot easier for us to not question.
And I think the word normal is so dangerous. You know, like, what is normal? I have two kids that are completely different. Is one more normal than the other? No. Because we put the label on normal and decide what that is for us. But if we didn't have that word, how would life be different?
It's funny. I dated a long time ago. I dated someone, and he always says normal is a setting on the washing machine.
I love that.
I was like, learn that from him. So, you know, everyone has a nugget.
So
I was like, oh my God,
good.
that's so good, because it's so true. It's just a setting that we've created, you know, to define. So that's just amazing. Well, I'm so grateful that you're here. It was such a surprise for you to be coming to Mazatlan. I'm like, oh my gosh, before we do lunch,
yes,
get your gorgeous dress on.
It is just time for us to connect, and then to be able to share this with your community and my community, of course.
No, it's a beautiful thing. So I would love to know, where can we find you? Your website. I will say, my husband, when I said, you know who Karen McGregor, she's coming over to do a podcast. And because he always says, oh, which one's Karen? Like, which one's this and which one's that? So I gave him your website, and he sent me a text. He goes, she's a rock star. And I'm like, of course she is. So I know you have a website, KarenMcGregor.com.
Yes.
McGregor.com. And then where else can we find you on social media?
Yeah, social
Okay.
media, Home of the Impact Entrepreneur is my business page.
I love it.
And Instagram, Home of Impact Entrepreneurs. There's a
Amazing.
group they can join
Oh,
on
good.
Facebook of the same
Yeah.
name. So yeah, find me there. And it's very exciting what we're up to. So I would love to and encourage people
Yeah.
to join us on that
Oh,
journey.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited. Is there anything that you would like to share that we may have missed before we close out that you feel would be impactful?
Gratitude. I
Oh.
think gratitude, Diane, you are the perfect epitome of someone who just lives their life in gratitude. And I am so blessed to be here. And I just want to say
Aw.
thank you.
Aw.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. And there were a couple things that you said specifically on and off camera that really impacted me without getting emotional, but I really honor you as a woman and as a leader and as just someone who is impacting the world. And I'm excited to be whatever part of that I can be and that my community can be as well too. So grateful.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to my amazing, beautiful community. I'm so honored to have this opportunity, and any little nugget that any of my guests share, I just believe that it's just these little nuggets that can help to shift the world. So I just want to say thank you to my amazing community. Again, we are on YouTube, Spotify. If you could please share this with anyone that you think would be able to benefit from these messages, it's just my honor to share with you. My wish for you, as you know, is to follow the magic that ignites your own inner essence. If you want to learn about the work that I'm doing in the new year on a mastermind to help you to follow the magic that ignites the inner essence, I have a guide program that I'm doing in 2025. You can find all of the information on lucysmiles.com. And if you want to get inspired every week, I do have an intuition based message that goes out sometime during the week. It's never on a specific day because that wouldn't be my intuition. So you could join my messages. You could follow the guidebook on my website. And I'm just excited to air this beautiful conversation with Karen McGregor. And until next time, we will see you soon.